So what's asbestos? I'm hoping most of you know. It's a fibrous mineral silicate. It's a completely natural material, and it can generally be found wherever there are ancient volcanic igneous rocks. So we have got naturally occurring asbestos in the UK. It's in Scotland, it's in the Midlands, and it's in Cornwall. And this is what it looks like on the screen there. I think I can point with the mouse, can I? No, I can't. Well, on the right-hand side of that screen, you've got a big lump of asbestos-bearing rock, and it's got an asbestos vein going right the way through it, and they'll just crush it to get the asbestos out of it. So we've got chrysotile white asbestos at the top. It's a serpentine asbestos. It's the only one. Important property of chrysotile white asbestos is it's hydrophilic, so it attracts water, and when it's wet, there's no fibre release from it whatsoever. It's why the Canadians would like us to get rid of all our asbestos regulations and start accepting white asbestos again. But Europe, we will not be having asbestos back in Europe, hopefully. We then got amosite brown asbestos. It's one of the most common amphibole asbestos types. And we've got the most deadly asbestos, which is grapsidolite blue asbestos, spelt crocodilite. And again, it's an amphibole. All the other asbestos types are amphiboles. These three are the only commercially mined types. Our supply of grapsidolite blue asbestos was Australia. Asbestos materials aren't imported into this country anymore, but that's where it came from. And if you ever emigrate to Australia, they've got big problems because they were a big home user of blue asbestos. Really, really nasty stuff. Amphiboles in general, nasty stuff. There's three other types of amphibole asbestos, and they're normally found as contaminants in the other materials. That's amphipholite, tremolite, and actinolite. Try saying that when you're a bit drunk. It's quite a lot. So this is an asbestos mine. It's how they mine asbestos. They tend to be open cast. Inadvertent mining by the Australians in their opal mines, we found gave rise to massive, massive fibre levels for the miners mining for opals. Volcanic rock, you're going to find asbestos. It's always going to be there. But this is how they mine it. It will go into the central processing plant. It will be crushed, and the asbestos fibre will be extracted. The reason it's taking so long to get rid of this really nasty material that we know a lot about, it's got fantastic physical properties. It's really resistant to heat, acid and alkali attack. It's brilliant for building materials. Really is a good material. But it does kill you, and it takes a long time to do it. So where is asbestos still produced if you go to other parts of the world? Canada, still mined and produced there. Soviet Union, South Africa, China, Brazil, India, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, all mine and produce asbestos-containing materials. There's a little picture there on the left. That is, well, the asbestos sorting men. It's been commercially mined for over 2,000 years. The Romans used to mine it. The Romans invaded parts of Persia just to get their hands on the asbestos mines. Fantastic commercial product. You've literally just got to crush the rock, and you've instantly got a fibrous material that can be woven and can be put into other products to improve them. Really, really good commercial material. Very, very cheap. It's been used in commercial objects for at least 4,000 years. That's a recent discovery. We found pots with asbestos in. And the place where the clay pots were found, there was no naturally occurring asbestos. So they've actually added it to it as a binder, and they're 4,000 years old. That was in Belgium, I think. The 1950s to the 1970s were the boom times for the asbestos industry in the UK, and when we look around this site, there's quite a lot of that age of buildings. Certainly a lot of places got refurbed. We get Victorian, Edwardian places that are refurbed, and you see asbestos materials being put in. In Victorian times, they used to think that asbestos needed to be on show. It was a new thing. We're just putting in a heating system, and we've got a pipe going up in the hallway. We're going to lag it with the new asbestos material. We see that now and again. It's quite common. So all asbestos fibres are category 1 carcinogens. Category 1 carcinogen. It's known to cause cancer in humans, and that includes ionising radiation. And I was talking earlier on to someone here that had been affected by ionising radiation when he went into a watch repair place and his watch lit up because there was so much ionising radiation in there. It all damages you, but there is a cause and effect, an exposure and effect with asbestos, same as there is with radiation. Over 4,000 people die every year from asbestos diseases, mainly lung cancer and mesothelioma. 2 years ago, it was 7,600. The HSE has stopped producing figures. They're just telling us to tell you that it's over 4,000 people. Many of these victims, which was unusual because I've been doing this for a long time, so I've seen a few of my friends die of this, but they were asbestos laggers to start with. And then that's all they knew, so they became asbestos strippers and made their millions as asbestos stripping firms. There was a massive amount of money earlier on in the industry. But now it's tending to be building and maintenance workers, the carpenters, the plumbers, electricians. And I've seen it in my own sons and son-in-laws, where they're electricians or plumbers. They'll bash through that board or that ceiling to get their work done and go home. And they won't really care what it is. And they've all done it. But this continual dosage that they're getting is bringing up the asbestos diseases. Development of the disease can take between 15 to 60 years. So it's a massive variance and it's a long time. And that's one of the good things and one of the bad things about asbestos is that because it's not like electrics, you put your finger in a socket, you're going to die. Asbestos takes a long time. So building and construction workers tend not to worry about it too much. And it's a similar problem we're going to get with crystalline silica, where you see the guys cutting up slabs and concrete and not using wet work, which instantly gets rid of the problem. They're all getting these massive exposures of crystalline silica, because there's quite a lot of crystalline silica in modern building materials. There's no cure. There's no cure to mesothelioma once it's diagnosed. I've found, certainly with my friends, 2 or 3 months, you're finished. They can prolong it. They can prolong your life now, but it's very, very quick. Exposure is almost totally avoidable by safe working practice. And it's interesting, I'm not normally lecturing to the top of the tree. I'm normally lecturing to the construction workers, and you get the young guys there, and they go, wow, I didn't know that. But it's almost totally avoidable by safe working practice. How can you deal with asbestos safely if you don't know where it is? As John was saying earlier on, he knows where all is. He knows where the problems are. The Health and Safety at Work Act requires an employer to conduct their work in such a way that their employees will not be exposed to health and safety risks. That's the first one. The CDM regs, they require you to have an asbestos register. You should be able to pass that on, the client should be able to pass that on before any work begins. And it should be part of the health and safety file. Control of asbestos at work regulations, which has just been, it was updated in 2012. The HSE really dragged their feet on this one, and they only just brought out the approved code of practice. But it is very good. It is very good. It does bring everything together. It certainly makes my life easier when I'm talking to clients, trying to explain the legalities of things, what they have to do and what they don't have to do. Now that requires employees to prevent the exposure employers to prevent the exposure of employees to asbestos. If this is not practicable, and there's a get out here, to reduce the exposure to the lowest possible level. So that's a nice get out. Any of the buildings where you've got asbestos materials, you'd normally see something like this. This is a standard HSE sign that you, a little tiny sticker you put on your asbestos. This is one that we've modified. You are allowed, at the top there is one we've modified. You are allowed to do these things as long as you can make them equivalent to or better than. And this is one we did for a university because they didn't want all the students knowing that there was asbestos everywhere. Literally, because when you put an asbestos sticker on something, particularly on things like council estates, people want to break it. So we went with this sign, which all of the building and maintenance workers on that site were educated. This is the big A, it means asbestos. Permit to work required before work on that material. So the training comes in. Regulation 10, I'll summarise this. It requires employers to make sure that anyone liable to disturb asbestos during their work or supervises such employees, so that's you really, receives the correct level of instruction and training. That is the asbestos awareness training. Normally that would take me 3 hours, but as I said, I've put everything on there. Follow my worksheet through, fill in the exam form, send it to me, and you will have your certificate saying that you've done asbestos awareness training. And you will know a lot more after working your way through that. So not only they've got to be trained, but you should be trained as well. It should be given at regular intervals. We're all the professionals in the asbestos industries and the testing industries, we're trying to get this changed because 12 monthly is too quick. Most qualifications last 5 years, and we'd like to do that. But the HSE feel that this is such a big risk at the moment, it's killing so many people, that we need to update their training at 12 months. There are 3 types of information, instruction and training. Asbestos awareness, that's the basic one, available today. Non-licensable work with asbestos, including notifiable non-licensed works. That's what changed in the regulations in 2012. So if you've got any of your building and maintenance workers that want to do non-licensed work, they do have to have extra training above that of awareness. I'm getting people that are doing awareness training and then going straight on to do non-licensed work. Well, you need extra training for non-licensed work, and that would cover things like bagging waste, use of H-type vacuum cleaners, special asbestos vacuum cleaners, removing the waste, decontamination procedures. That's not covered in asbestos awareness. And then you've got licensable work with asbestos. This is really, really intensive training. It's the guys who have to suit and boot up, all the enclosures come in. It's really, really intensive training, and it's normally carried out by people like ARCA, the Asbestos Removal Contractors Association. Very, very intensive practical training as well. So dealing with this safely, your asbestos register. You've all got this little form on your table, and don't worry, don't all have to sort it out. We're going to go through it, but it is on the disc as well. All these things are on the disc. There's some of the places where you can find asbestos. There's over 3,000 uses that have been used in buildings for asbestos materials. So Regulation 4 of the Control of Asbestos at Work Act requires that duty holders take reasonable steps to find materials likely to contain asbestos and to check their condition. Presume that materials contain asbestos unless there's strong evidence to suppose there is not. Make a written record of location and condition of asbestos-containing materials, ACMs, and keep that record up to date. You also should assess the risk of the likelihood of anyone being exposed to these materials and prepare a plan to manage that risk and put it into effect to ensure that any material known or presumed to contain asbestos is kept in a good state of repair, or if necessary is removed. You don't have to remove it. I did a shipyard last year, and they had a whole building full up with asbestos, old asbestos gasket stock. A whole building, it was as big as this, 2 stories, full of asbestos gaskets. And they said, wow, don't you know what we're going to do about this? I said, well, yeah, probably looking about £40,000 to clear this. Do you use these? Do you use this building? No, no one ever comes in here. Put a padlock on the building, shut the building, forget about it, put it into your management plan that no one goes in there. They have to sign the key out if they want to. They have to wear protective equipment. No one's been in that building for at least a year now, and they probably won't be going in. That's a good way of dealing with it. Remove the risk. If you're not going to use the building, then it's a low risk. if this was an asbestos insulation board console, and we're using this every day, it's a really high risk material, use of the building, really high risk material. It needs to be dealt with, needs to be removed. So that you can manage asbestos. You know, you have to work out the use of the buildings, and only you know that, because people, I normally get asked, you're the consultant, what should we do with this? Well, you need to tell me what the use of that room is, what the use of that building is. And normally the owner of the building, the user of the building, is the only person that can do that. Information on the location and condition of the asbestos-containing materials are given to anyone potentially at risk. I didn't try and trip the lady up at the desk, so I didn't ask her the question when I signed in at reception, but I was going to ask her where the asbestos register was. She was pretty efficient. I reckon she would have had it there. She was pretty efficient. She was rocking there. So you come to reception, that's where your asbestos register should be, really. So that any contractors coming in say, can I see the asbestos register? And they should ask for it. No one ever does. I'm in the real world. I know they don't. But they should be able to ask for it and be shown the asbestos register. Most schools do this. Most schools do this. I'm really pleased with a lot of schools I manage, and their register's there. Done. They don't have to have it all ripped up. The government did a really good thing in transferring them into using all their own funds, because they knew there was a big asbestos problem in just about every single school. Our kids are getting dosed up with asbestos fibre. We were dosed up with asbestos fibre, and it probably started at school. I did one where we were doing an asbestos removal job. I was looking after an asbestos removal job. The guys were doing the boiler house, completely enclosed, all their boots and suits and shower units like spacemen. And the caretaker came up to me and said, oh, you're the asbestos consultant guy. Can you tell me what this is? I said, well, that's asbestos insulation board. Where did you get that? Really nasty stuff, full of brown asbestos. Oh, I've just been sawing it up in that classroom over there. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. But it happens. So we had to decontaminate the classroom. A load of expense. It really didn't need to happen. How can you comply with those regulations? In buildings built before 2000, it's a requirement to have an asbestos register at least to a management standard. The import and use of all asbestos and asbestos products has been illegal since 2000. That's why they've made that the cut-off point. To be honest, I tend not to see it past 1986, but the HSE require it up to 2000. If it's after 2000, or you can give architects drawings and specifications for the building, you don't need one. The survey should be to a management standard as defined by HSG 264, the Surveyor's Guide, which again is on your desk for you, so that's on there. And there's a really good section in that that shows you quite a lot of pictures of asbestos-containing materials. The survey should be carried out by a competent person. BOHS deal with competent persons. So you go to get your training at BOHS to become a competent person to do surveying. The information in the report will contain details of the location of the asbestos-containing materials. Can't deal with it safely if we don't know where it is. The type of asbestos-containing materials, pipe insulation, cement products, vinyl products, sprayed flock, ceiling tiles, all sorts of things. The type of asbestos in the asbestos-containing materials. So is it chrysotile, is it a serpentine asbestos, which is a much lower risk? Or is it one of the other amphibole asbestos types, so amosite or chrysotile? The condition of it, that should be on the register. Risk assessment based on the materials assessment. So the actual materials assessment has its own risk assessment. And the use of the building, that's something that you would have to do. The most important part, I think, of any of these survey reports are the plans. I see loads and loads of survey reports. People get other people to do the surveys, and my clients sometimes have to use someone else. And I have a look at the survey report, and it's just pages and pages and pages of guff to justify the really high fee they're putting for it, with a really rotten plan. and with no electronic copy either, so you can't blow up the plan to see the bits you want. We always do ours on Word, but on PDF they're really good because you can blow up the bit of plan you want, and you can publish that bit of plan for the contractor that's working in that particular area. So they need to be really clear and easily understood, and please shout me down if I've got this wrong. I think that's clear and reasonably understood. This is a university building, and the area is shaded in yellow. The whole building, over the last 20 years, we have surveyed the whole campus. It took us about 6 months, and got that up to a management standard, and pretty much pinpointed all the asbestos we could in those buildings. But the area shaded in yellow, this was part of a Wi-Fi project, and they were installing Wi-Fi. And the requirement is, wherever you're doing building and maintenance works, is that you do a refurb and demolition survey. That's much more intrusive than a management survey. And we have to make sure the client's aware of that, because they say, well, we're going to open up the ceilings. Well, hang on, Dave, they're all brand new ceilings. I said, well, do you need to go above them? Yeah. Well, then we're going to need to get into them. But as they're all brand new ceilings, what we do is we use cameras instead. There are ways of doing it without damaging the infrastructure of the building. But the yellow parts we did up to a R&D survey, and you can see there wasn't anything there. But when we published the plan for the contractors, for the Wi-Fi contractors, we left all the other materials in there. Even though it's not going to affect them, they need to know about it, because we had some problems where they wandered off their area. Generally, I put asbestos rope as blue. Any nasty stuff, asbestos insulation board was red there in the ducts, and we had another pipe enclosure panel. Both of those panels were picked up as part of the R&D. We didn't know about it before we did the R&D. So both of those were picked up as extras. So it needs to be done. Also in this, unfortunately, we then surveyed some more areas for another, where they expanded the project area, and we found that someone had pinched the copper pipe, and on the pipe brackets there was asbestos rope. And all they'd done is they'd just left the asbestos rope all over the ceiling, so they contaminated all the ceilings. Not major contamination, because asbestos rope stayed intact, but it's an expense we really didn't need, just because someone wanted to pinch the pipe. Luckily, we photographed it the year before and at this time, so we managed to track the contractor back. He won't be working there again. Right, so there are two types of asbestos surveys: buildings built before 2000. Management survey, it won't be very intrusive. We try and make ours as intrusive as possible, and I don't think any surveyor worth their salt will not go as far as they can to tell you where all the asbestos materials are. You might contain some presumptions, and they tend to be worse presumptions rather than nice presumptions for you. We will presume that a lot of the materials are asbestos where we can't get to them. It will give the duty holder a good idea where asbestos-containing materials are, and enable them to take appropriate actions to protect staff from the asbestos-containing materials during normal day-to-day use of the building. This type of survey will also allow the duty holder to establish an asbestos control plan. It's something also that is a requirement. You need a control plan. We've actually come up with quite a few control plan templates that can be used in different size organisations. We did one for a little wood yard. The environmental health, it tends not to be HSE driven prosecutions. They tend to be environmental health driven. The environmental health had visited this little building from the local council, and they said, well, where's your asbestos survey? He didn't have one. It has been a requirement. So they made him do one. We went and did it for him. They said, well, where's your asbestos control? And this poor guy, I mean, he's a woodyard. He didn't understand all this stuff. And so we went and did it for him. Very reasonable, got him a nice control plan. They said, great, and they just went away. End of problem. But in big buildings can get quite complicated. We did one for Harwich International Port. That was quite a complicated one. A lot of different materials there. A refurb and demolition survey. It will be required where there's refurb or demolition to be carried out. What scares a lot of people off of this, and they just carry on doing the works without the refurb and demo survey anyway, they work from the management survey. Totally illegal, shouldn't do it. They do that because they think, oh, refurb and demolition survey, I've got to have every floor done as a refurb and demo survey. No, you don't. You just have to have the refurb and demolition survey done in the area where you're going to work. So if they were going to do some work on the radiators here, we'd pull these up and just do the radiators. We'd follow the services back. We might need to go into electrical cupboards and boiler rooms, but we wouldn't necessarily survey the floors and survey the ceilings. Just wouldn't be necessary. The survey, when you receive it, should make that quite clear, areas where you didn't get, just in case the contractors move their parameters. So it doesn't have to be the whole building, but a lot of unscrupulous surveyors in the past have completely ripped off clients and so made a bad name for everyone. So everyone seems to be a bit scared of doing it. So it can be very intrusive, and we'll normally recommend removal of the asbestos-containing materials, but not always. You can manage these things. If the asbestos-containing materials are not going to be in the way of the contractors, they can be labelled, the contractors can be made aware of it. End of problem. You don't have to have the cost. So going back to this plan, I've already gone through it, but you can see we found 2 extra things there. It's nice and clear. I think it's nice and clear. Am I wrong? Please tell me if I'm wrong. It needs to be in colour, not black and white with little sample numbers saying this is asbestos. Your builder needs to be able to understand this. The pipe fitter needs to be understanding. Nice colours, nice bold colours. Usual sorts, what do these materials look like? What do asbestos-containing materials? They look like any other building materials. Don't look any different. We get quite a lot of problems differentiating as surveyors between asbestos insulation board, modern Superlux and Tentex boards. Needs to be sampled to find out. Asbestos cement corrugated roof sheeting. Non-asbestos cement sheets, sometimes they're stamped with NT on the edge of the sheet. Drain pipes and gutters, the non-asbestos ones NT. It just means new technology, and sometimes the old one will be AT, but not always. You see, it's not guaranteed. It's generally one of the things that you can do as a non-licensed product. It's a low fibre release when it's broken. You still get some fibre release, but it's a low fibre release when it's broken. The worst problem when I'm doing risk assessments for people with this, especially the demo people, we did the Warner Brothers studios. They were doing asbestos cement removal there, and the directors were driving past every day, seeing clouds of dust as the guys were putting big diggers and smashing the roofs down. Big problems. Can you come and have a look at this, Dave, and sort it out? The HSE had agreed the method. They'd put in a method to do it, to get a big grab and just pull the roofs down. What they didn't realise that Warner Brothers Studios used to be a mosquito factory, and the asbestos cement roofs were bomb-proof. They'd been interwoven with linen strips about that wide, right the way through the sheets, all crisscrossed. And the asbestos removal guys thought they were going to just gently pull it down and it'd all fall down in big sheets. It didn't. It came down in tiny amounts. So we placed air tests all around the site, all flagged so we could see the wind direction, because obviously the highest concentration of fibre is going to be downwind. And that was okay, but HSE came down, yeah, we're happy with that. I said, well, I'm not happy. And so I got the guys to fix up spray wetting booms on their diggers. End of problem. And they also had too many guys in the area picking up asbestos debris. I said, why are you doing that? We've got excavators on site and we've got closed skips. I need 1 man. That's the only man at risk. I don't need 5 guys picking. So we had excavators. They just hadn't thought the job out properly at all. Everyone agreed to methods too quickly. And they hadn't got me in to have a look at it. Could have saved them a lot of money. But there you go. So we've got asbestos insulation board on the window reveal. Architect and planners didn't do their job properly when they built this, and had to fill in the gap with a bit of asbestos insulation board. Looks just like the concrete until you get it surveyed. It's generally a licensed product. It's brown asbestos normally, sometimes blue asbestos in corrugated sheet, but it still remains a non-licensed product because when you break it, the fibre release is quite low because it's very dense. Asbestos insulation board tends to be not such a dense board, It's normally with andesite brown asbestos in, which is a particularly straight fibre, and the fibre release is massive when you break it. But it has been used everywhere, AIB, and it's the one that the electricians normally drill through quite a lot. So what can you do about these materials? If they're in good condition, check them on a regular basis, inform everyone at risk about them, get them into a management plan, and after due consideration, you could do nothing. If there's no risk, do nothing, leave it alone. Might be worth painting it, sealing it, putting a sticker on it. Put them into a permit to work system. No one goes near this unless you've got a permit to work, so that they know what they're working near, know what the risks are. Seal the materials and label them. It's certainly what we do with a lot of schools. They can't afford to remove these things. Just can't afford to do it. It's very, very expensive, asbestos removal work. But if you're not going to drill through them in the near future, seal them and label them. Chelmsford Hospital, one of the big problems they had, I got called in afterwards, as usual. Dave, can you come and check this work? We're not too happy with it. Went to check the work, and they'd taken out a whole corridor of asbestos tiles out the ceiling. I said, well, why did you do that then? What was? Oh, we're doing wiring above there, so we needed to get all the asbestos tiles. So we didn't really think about it. What you could have done is just put the wiring in trunking down the corridor. Well, are we allowed to do that? Well, yeah, because you are. Why did you spend £30,000 having this done? And you've got the reinstatement costs on top of that. Why didn't you call me first? And we could have sorted it all out. But they went on and they got an asbestos removal company involved. Asbestos removal companies are interested in getting you to remove asbestos. That's where they make their money. Scare the life out of everyone. Get a consultant involved. So you can encapsulate the materials and label them. Now, I get a lot of argument with people. Seal the materials and label them literally is just painting them. Encapsulating the materials is covering them with a calico cloth and then painting them as well, normally with a rubberized sealant paint, so that if you accidentally bash into the stuff, there's no fibre release. It stays behind the calico. Remove the materials really is a last resort. The chances of exposing the guys that are removing them, they don't care, they want to remove it. They're going to worry about getting asbestos diseases later on. But don't remove them if you don't need to. It's dangerous for everyone. So working with asbestos-containing materials, it may require a licensed contractor. If it turns out to be licensed work, for instance, all of these wallboards, if they were asbestos insulation board, that certainly would be a licensed contractor needed to do that. And if you'd not had your building surveyed and suddenly they find out it's AIB, you have now got to wait 14 days for that contractor to notify those works to the HSE. So that's your project stopped dead for 14 days. Plus, of course, the added problem, they're going to have to notify it, so the HSE will know that you didn't survey the building properly and plan the works. And that's a big prosecution, that one. They might just require a trained, non-licensed contractor. Could be people on your own staff, could be outside contractors. And that might be notifiable. It's 1 day, it's instant. They do it on the internet. Most non-licensed contractors will say, no, that doesn't need notification. There's some sheets, it's on your disc as well. There's some sheets over there for you, and I'm going to go through it in a little while. And this is as clear as mud, these sheets. We'll go through it in a while, but it's the difference between licensed works and non-licensed works. And it's basically works that you're really going to get high fibre release and works that you're expected to get quite a low fibre release. You don't have to use an asbestos consultant. Don't have to do it. However, it is best practice. I could have saved people loads of money over the years. It protects you from excessive removal costs and from removing asbestos-containing materials that you may not need removal in the first place. And of course, there's always the considerable cost of reinstating a really durable, fireproof material. because you're going to have to replace it with the same fire-rated material, normally, especially ceilings. If asbestos-containing materials don't need removing, and a risk assessment has shown that the risk is low or negligible, then leave it in place and monitor its condition. Normally done every 12 months. If you get into the situation where something's getting damaged, you might have asbestos insulation built board on an entrance to a block of flats. If it's getting damaged, then your risk assessment is going to say, well, that needs to come out. Asbestos removal contractor's dream, this is. It's sectional pipe insulation. It's about 80%, up to 90% asbestos, sectional insulation. Just like glass fibre, very similar, and secured by bands. Asbestos removal guys will spend 2 days setting up to do this and 10 minutes taking it off, and then about another 2 hours clearing up. And you will probably pay in the region of £5,000–6,000 to have that done. Sectional asbestos pipe insulation can be amphibole or serpentines. Material cannot be left alone. This is really damaged. People are going in, accessing this riser quite a lot. It needs to be taken out. It's going to have a really high fire release if someone bumps into it. It's pretty well damaged, a really nasty condition. Could be encapsulated, but it really is a waste of time. Risk assessment wise, this is easy to get out. It requires a licensed contractor. The bands just unclip and it's easily removed. It's also cheap to reinstate. Glass fibre insulation, mineral fibre insulation is cheap to reinstate, so just be reinstated straight away. Here's an interesting one. This actually is glass fibre insulation. It had been coated in a substance called keen cement, really hard plaster. But where they'd wanted, I don't know why they didn't continue doing it in keen cement, but where we had a bend or an end, they'd finished it in asbestos. Don't know why, really strange. But it was encapsulated, covered in, now covered in calico, and it's labelled, clearly labelled, and it's also on the plan, clear plans. There we go, and it's actually down, if I can get this to work. That's it there, right there, that's where that asbestos was. There's an AIB panel on the wall. This is asbestos rope on pipe brackets above ceilings. There's a good old yellow box where the Wi-Fi guys were working. But just because you acted responsibly and labelled and identified it, doesn't mean your contractors or employees will. I haven't got any photographs on this one today, but certainly this year at the University of Essex, we had a contractor actually drill through the middle of a label saying asbestos, do not cut, drill or saw. Another contractor that won't ever be working there again, but there we go. This one was interesting. We first identified this asbestos insulation board panel in one of the plant rooms in 2006. None of that installation was on that panel in 2006. But all the little asbestos A signs, and you can see the little dot, the little A's, that's what we did then. A, everywhere. And the asbestos warning tape was put on afterwards by a very angry engineer. And we came in and we saw this and we said, oh, Christ almighty, they've installed... Oh yeah, but we didn't fix that box where there was an A sticker. And honestly, I come across this quite regular. BT, we had a plant room with an asbestos ceiling, and they'd actually managed to run their cables to avoid the A stickers. So we said, well, look, we had a big meeting, something's going wrong with our control plan, something's wrong, and we need to label these a little bit better. So we moved to this. I said, now this covers your arse, because they could say, well, there wasn't enough A stickers. If it went to court, we might lose. So I need to cover your corporate arse. So we did this. AIB boarding within tape boundary. I think that's it. Now, let's hope no one else decides to ignore that sign and drill, you know. And all the contractors at this university campus are made to go on my asbestos awareness course, which is made longer, unfortunately for them, because we tell them where all the materials are and what all the signs are. But it still happened this year. So illustration of licensed and non-licensed works, and clear as mud from the HSE as usual. They are pretty good most of the time. So you've got licensed works that's going to cost you some money, 14 days notification in red. There's a little bit of a purple or grey area, notifiable non-licensed work. So it's non-licensed asbestos work, but they're going to have to notify the HSE they're doing it. And it's normally where the works is with lower fibrous material, but not always, because you've got asbestos insulation board there. So high fibre release, loose fill, lagging insulation, pretty obvious really. They're all pretty obvious. Asbestos insulation, sprayed insulation, loose dust. And that's interesting. Where the guys had taken the pipe out, even though it was asbestos rope, that work could have been done as non-licensed work, because it would have been low fibre release, very small amount of works, but suddenly where the guy had nicked the pipe and there was now debris, it was now licensed works. Big problems, big expense. Asbestos insulation board, there are extra restrictions on that. It's less than 1 square metre. So if you've got a small access panel for services and you need to take it off, it can be taken off by non-licensed work. There's no 14 days notice. Put into a bag, carefully bagged, taken away, replaced with a modern material. But for non-licensed work, it's less than 1 square metre. And also less than 1 hour's work for one person, less than 2 hours work for 2 or more people. And they put that proviso in because they can say, you could have said, well, we've got 14 people here, we're going to work for 14 hours. Doesn't work, they only get 2 hours. And it is workable. Certainly at the university, we managed to plan the works properly. They had to drill through texture coating and ceilings. I said, fine, non-licensed work. I did non-licensed work training for them. Well, what are we going to do in 2 hours, Dave? I said, well, plenty, because if you plan the work, you can get all the holes drilled in less than 2 hours and then put your fittings up. What about taking them off? You're not touching the texture coating, taking the fittings off. So it needs planning, but you can certainly do quite a large amount of work as non-licensed works. So the non-licensed works, at the bottom, floor tiles, thermoplastic floor tiles. There's really no fibre release from these sorts of materials. Bitumen mastics, felt, so you get DPCs, you get damp-proof course on buildings. A lot of those have got asbestos in. Really not a problem, but it needs to be done by a trained contractor. So they should be bagging everything up properly, they should be decontaminating, they should be protecting themselves. This is what British Occupational Hygiene Society is all about. We're about protecting workers, not managers of buildings. So strings, asbestos rope, which is 100% asbestos, kept virtually intact and removed whole. Really good example of non-licensed work would be asbestos fused flash guards in switch panels. You've got 5 flash guards behind the fuses. They can be vacuumed out using an H-type vac in less than a minute. So really low fibre exposure, that's what it's all about. Asbestos cement products, resin-based materials, we get the old amosite, brown asbestos containing plastic toilet cisterns. See those quite a lot in old properties. If it doesn't need to come out, leave it in, not a problem, just put an asbestos sticker on it. The control limits. Now, a lot of non-licensed work, people do non-licensed works and they get caught up in other legislation. There are other control limits that defines non-licensed work. The control limit is for non-licensed work is 0.1 fibres per cubic centimetre. I'm an old fart and I used to use fibres per mil, same thing. But it's actually, and a lot of the contractors that I lecture, they can't envisage a fibre per mil, and I worked for the government many years ago and I know why they use fibres per mil, so it didn't scare the building industry at that time. I think every contractor can visualise 100,000 fibres per cubic metre. The clearance level, when you have an area cleared of asbestos and it says less than 0.010 fibres per mil, we use that level because that is a limit of detection, accurate limit of detection. 0.010 fibres per mil is 10,000 fibres per cubic metre. We would hope that when you're given an area back as clean, it's nowhere near that, nowhere near that. That's a limit of detection, so that's what we're working to. So it's averaged over a period of 4 hours. The work must also be of sporadic and low intensity. Fibre level must not exceed 0.6 fibres per cubic centimetre of air over 10 minutes. So 600,000 fibres per cubic metre you're allowed to work in. As long as it doesn't exceed that for 10 minutes, I don't think I want to work in that. And the works must be of short duration. So 2 hours in any 7-day period for more than one person, 1 hour for one person. It can be done, the regulations can be used to get quite a lot of building works done. They're not safe levels, there is no safe level, same as with ionising radiation, there's no safe level, but they're ones that mustn't be exceeded. So in summary, comply with L143. I've put the ACOP on your disc for you, it's all on there. Control of asbestos at work regulations, get awareness training. Again, you can do that from the disc. The only way to know what risks from asbestos-containing materials are is to identify them first with a survey. That's really the first step. Get it done by a trained, competent person, get a consultant involved. You could all do the BOHS course P402 asbestos surveying. You wouldn't necessarily pass it because you need experience and to provide a report, but it's worth doing. Once a survey's been carried out and a register's been provided, formulate your control plan. Appoint a duty holder. Who's the person earning the most money in the company that can afford to go to prison the longest when it goes wrong? At the University of Essex, we appointed the Vice-Chancellor. Big meeting, Vice-Chancellor, he can go. He's ultimately the duty holder. Make sure all relevant staff and contractors know where the asbestos-containing materials are. That register should be at reception, so that any contractors can ask for it. They should be asking for it. They don't, but they should be. Remove any asbestos-containing materials that are a high risk based on the materials type, which will be in your survey, so it will be anything from 2, low risk, up to and above 9, very high risk material. But you can still have a very high risk material if you're not using that area a lot. It's a low risk room, it's a low risk area, so you don't need to deal with it straight away. But if it's in use a lot, then your survey and your information will say it needs removing. Repair any damaged materials to reduce the risk. That's really easy done. Surveyor goes round, whoa, these are all high risk, they're coming up. Go around and repair them, that's it. Sorted. Bring the risk right down. Monitor and label all asbestos-containing materials and update the survey on a regular basis. Sooner if there are any changes. So if you have any works done, then you need to update it straight away.